The French and Indian War was part of the 7 Years' War in Europe. Britain and France fought for control of the Ohio Valley in Canada. The Algonquins, who feared British expansion into the Ohio Valley, allied with the French. The Mohawks also fought for the French, while the rest of the Iroquois nation allied with the British. The colonies fought under British commanders. British eventually won and gained control of all the remaining French possessions in Canada as well as India. Spain, who allied with the French, seceded Florida to Britain but received Louisiana in return.
Propaganda of the Gospel among Indians was founded in 1787 as a means for civilizing and Christianizing the Indians. Many denominations sent missionaries to Indian villages.
The federal government joined the effort to civilize Native Americans that had first been undertaken by the colonies and the churches. In 1793, Congress designated $20,000, a substantial sum for the time, to provide literacy, farming, and vocational assistance to Native Americans. The Indian Trade and Intercourse Act was a set of measures enacted between 1790 and 1847 to improve relations with American Indians by granting the United States government sole authority to regulate interactions between Indians and non-Indians.
The U.S. acquisition of the Louisiana Territory from the French in 1803 for $15 million. The purchase secured American control of the Mississippi River and doubled the size of the nation. This influenced the Native Americans that lived on that land because the land was sold so rapidly that they had to relocate without notice. The natives were forced to give up their lifestyles. They were forcibly removed from their lands and given unusable reservation land. They were forced into becoming domestic dependents under U.S. foreign policy, whereby the federal government supplied them with minimal clothing, blankets, and agricultural supplies. Some of those blankets were laced with smallpox.
They traveled up the Missouri River, through the Rockies, and to the mouth of the Columbia River. This exploration bolstered America's claims to Western lands, as well as opening the West to Indian trade and further exploration. Their expedition opened up Oregon country, which later many white settlers found to be their home, kicking much of the Indian populations to the curb.
To negotiate land exchange treaties with tribes living east of the Mississippi. The treaties enacted under this act's provisions paved the way for the reluctant and often forcible immigration of tens of thousands of American Indians to the west. Under these treaties, the Indians were to give up their lands east of the Mississippi in exchange for lands to the west. Those wishing to remain in the east would become citizens of their home state. This act affected not only the southeastern nations, but many others further north. The removal was supposed to be voluntary and peaceful, and it was that way for the tribes that agreed to the conditions. But the southeastern nations resisted, and Jackson forced them to leave.
In 1832, the court invalidated a Georgia law that attempted to regulate access by U.S. citizens to the Cherokee country. The case revolved around two missionaries, Samuel Austin Worcester and Ezra Butler, who were welcomed by the Cherokee, but who had not obtained a license under Georgia law to live on Cherokee lands. Worcester and Butler were unlicensed missionaries, but welcomed by the Cherokee, disobeyed Georgia's law to take an oath of allegiance to the state or leave Cherokee land. Marshall claimed only the federal government could do that. He explained that the tribes were sovereign entities in much the same way Georgia was a sovereign entity. In defending the power of federal government, he was also affirming and explaining the rights of the tribes to remain free from authority of states' governments. The court held that the Cherokee Nation was a distinct political community within which Georgia law had no force. Georgia law was therefore unconstitutional.
Conflicts between the Seminoles and the U.S. caused the fiercest war waged by U.S. government against American Indians. The United States spent more than $20 million fighting the Seminoles. The war left more than 1,500 soldiers and uncounted American civilians dead. The whites tried to outset the Seminoles under the Indian Removal Act. The Seminoles tried to retain their land in Florida through fighting back. Native Americans were eventually forced to move west.
Created and implemented by President Jackson. It was a forced journey the American Indians had to make from Mississippi, Alabama to the west. Some tried to resist and were escorted by the U.S. military to the Indian reservations in Oklahoma. About 1/4 died by the time they got there. They were not familiar with plants or animals of Oklahoma, so they had to become dependent on the U.S. government.
White settlers refused to honor the Treaty of Fort Laramie. In 1862, Sioux Indians, led by Chief Little Crow, challenged white encroachments onto their lands. The Sioux ended up killing over 1,000 settlers before being defeated by the military.
The Homestead Act allowed settlers to acquire as much as 160 acres of land by giving it for 5 years, improving it, and paying a nominal fee of about $30. Instead of public land being sold primarily for revenue, it was now being given away to encourage a rapid filling of empty spaces to provide stimulus to the family farm. Turned out to be a cruel hoax because the land giving to the settlers usually had terrible soil and the weather included no rain. Many farmers were repoed or failed until dry farming took roots on the plains. Then wheat, then massive irrigation projects.
Massacre was an attack on a village of Sleeping Cheyenne Indians by a regiment of Colorado militiamen on the 29th of November in 1864 that resulted in the death of more than 200 tribal members.
10,000 Plains Indians came to Fort Laramie in Wyoming and agreed that the Indians would provide a corridor for the passage of wagon trains into the West. In exchange, the U.S. government promised that the remainder of Indian lands in the West would not be encroached upon. In 1863, the U.S. government agreed not to build a road through Sioux territory and abandoned 3 forts in Sioux if Sioux agreed to live on a reservation supported by the U.S. government.
Gold was discovered on the Black Hills Indian Reservation in South Dakota. Whites invaded the Indians' land and drove them on a warpath. The war culminated in June 1876 when Colonel George A. Custer and all his men were killed by the Sioux Indians at the Battle of Little Big Horn in southern Montana.
Spectacular clashes between the Sioux Indians and white men. They were spurred by the gold-greedy miners rushing into Sioux land. The white men were breaking their treaty with the Indians. The Sioux Indians were led by the Sitting Bull and they were pushed by Custer's forces. Custer led these forces until he was killed at the Battle of Little Big Horn. Many of the Indians were finally forced into Canada, where they were forced by starvation to surrender.
Indian reservations and distributed land to individual households. Leftover land was sold for money to fund U.S. government efforts to civilize Native American. Of 130 million acres held in Native American reservations before the act, 90 million were sold to non-Native buyers.
Was the last major armed conflict between the Lakota Sioux and the United States, subsequently described as a massacre by General Nelson A. Miles in a letter to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Many were killed.